Tension rises in the room as a voice gently mutters. "Count." The tip of his fingers brushed lightly against her heated cheek. Then his eyes narrowed suddenly just moments before he snatched her earring off, asking if she calls that a gift. He threw it down, continuing without restraint, calling it worth less than a pile of rocks. A smirk touched his lips as he asked if she really believed that timid little marquise with no taste, no spine, could ever satisfy her. Even if he acts like your loyal little dog, in the end he's just some kid standing stiff with his hands behind his back, pretending to look proper. "Layla. Look at me properly." In the end, she drifted into deep thought as she pondered on everything. How foolish, all these thoughts. In the end they're nothing but regrets I haven't let go of. Feelings I should have discarded, the moment I met him again. Moments ago, in the kingdom of Arkan at the Orleans ducal estate. Lady Hortensia was informed of the arrival Sir Edmund de Valois of the Valois Knights. The great knight who rewrote history in the last war. She let out a sigh of resignation as she mumbled that it seemed he didn't even understand that it was rude to show up late at night without notice. She concluded he was looking down on Orleans and ordered her maid to send him back, but she hesitated. The thing is, the next minute his knights appeared in her room. Her maid attempted to defend her, questioning how they could behave so rudely to the lady when suddenly a man spoke up from the midst of them. "It's been a while." That familiar voice immediately sent a sharp jolt through her. He flashed her a forced smile as he asked if she's been well, however he quickly retracted his question. Rather, he remarked that she better have been well. Then he leaned forward and with a whisper continued, "The girl who once hid in brothels just to survive, now wearing the fake shell of a noble lady, isn't that right? Layla, my little maid." She dismissed everyone around them, and once they were finally left alone, he stepped even closer, his hot breath rubbing against her skin as he politely asked her to sit, suggesting her leg must surely be hurting. She asks why he's come and he doesn't respond immediately. He reminds her it's been a while since they last met and asks if that's the first thing she's going to say to him. He comments that she's finally gotten the bright, comfortable life she's always wanted. "You abandoned me and ran for it, shouldn't you at least ask how I've been?" Layla. She simply stared at him, without uttering a single word. The sole heiress of the noble Duke family Orleans. Lady Hortensia, a title she obtained only after throwing him away. Thinking back on it, now she admits silently to herself, it was never a relationship that made sense from the start. 10 years ago, spring, Rhineland County. A new maid was introduced to the Count and she was Layla Heder. She paid her respects to him, he, the exiled king's illegitimate son, Leopold Rio Adelhart. When the former king was still a prince, he fell in love with his female knight. Even though they had a beautiful child together, their relationship soon faced a crisis. The kingdom's powerful noble house, the Grand Duchy of Batten, stretched their greedy hands towards the powerless prince. They placed their Grand Duchess, Beatrice, on the throne as queen, and the prince's beloved, now reduced to a concubine, died from an unknown poison. The abandoned child was given nothing but a hollow count title and exiled to that remote territory, Rhineland. They will spare his life only if he lived as a ghost. He didn't receive her well, rather he asked that she be sent back if the estate wasn't short on staff. Noting he didn't need a personal maid, but just as she was about to walk away, she called out to him. The king's exiled illegitimate child was the one who would become her master, and the one whom she must watch over. He asked why he should listen to her, and she explained that it was because there are times when one must take the cup in their hands, even knowing it may be poisoned. Is this perhaps jealousy? Backed by the Grand Ducal family of Argent, the Vadels, is Queen Beatrice, who holds a puppet king in her grasp. She was a person who never intended to hide her greed. But she became even more greedy after giving birth to Prince Michael. A person like that, even if the king's bastard child, a thorn in her side, was chased out to the countryside, would never just leave him be. He asked what she could possibly have to say to him that she had to send the head maid out calling her Layla. He asked if that was even her real name, and she with hesitation responded that none of that mattered. Instead, what was important was what she could do for him. She revealed that she didn't care whoever she was useful to as long as she could escape her hometown La Rosa on the southeastern border of the Arkan Kingdom. Living in the shadow of Tevel, a land thriving with trade and commerce, is La Rosa, a city of sin and pleasure. On those streets filled with red lanterns, she was born the daughter of a lady who sold her smiles. What that meant, she understood instinctively even before she learned how to read. If she couldn't escape that place, it meant she'll end up living the same life. If it means she can get out of there, she'd even take a hand offered by the devil because she didn't want to live like that. She was going to leave that place. She will never live a life like her mother. Standing in front of her, he asked if she just took the hand that was offered to her, noting it seemed she had no intention to hide that she was the queen's spy. Layla Heather. In the present day, she asks if he's been well, and he says yes. Then he reveals back when the Duchess of Orleans appeared, he became a mercenary just like he'd planned long ago. Then after that he got lucky, formed a night order, and even got his own territory. They called for him so desperately that he even went to war, and now it seems he's become something of a savior to Arkan. She brings up his achievements, and then averting her gaze from his, she retorts that for such a war hero as himself she can't imagine any reason he'd visit at that late hour. He pondered silently for a while before suddenly getting up. As he strode towards her, he explained that after he'd been through hell and back, he finally got his hands on a silver of power. So he naturally had a change of heart. The sole heir of Orleans, Lady Hortensia. Will you marry me? Before she could even process his words, he pulled her into his arms and continued. This time he told her he needed her right to succeed the Dukedom of Orleans. He explained that Orleans held a special position compared to other families. It wouldn't be easy for the dukedom to touch them. A noble family with both the blood of a foreign royal family and the Argent royal house. A family once so powerful it was its own principality, yet it aimed not for Arkan's throne but for the one in its home country. For Arkan, which gained a way to keep them in check for free, it's worth welcoming them with all sorts of special privileges. But what I want is the right to the throne that Orleans has always ignored, Layla. As you've heard, I'm just a mercenary from the countryside. Even if I receive land as a reward for winning a war, I can't enter the royal family. She looked up at him, her gaze softened as she asked if what he was saying was the reason he came to find her, the reason a traitor who hadn't so much as sent word once in 10 years must now be kept by his side is because he wishes to become king. But not only that, also by using Orleans and getting revenge on Battens. He asks if there's any reason he shouldn't, noting he's in that position now and she is Hortensia Orleans. The king's bastard child who was cast out has returned with enough power and fame to seek revenge, and in that very position a traitor holding an advantageous hand is living while hiding a fatal secret. What a useful card to play. If I were him I'd seek her out too, she thought. Outside her thoughts, he urged her to think carefully if she didn't wish to return to being the daughter of a whore, the handmaid Layla. She asks if even if she isn't Hortensia Orleans, if he has any proof that the people will believe in. He asks if that matters, and she admits she's simply a little scared of the Duchess of Orleans to run her mouth. Taking a portion of her hair in his hand, he asks her to come to his mansion before dawn, noting he'll be waiting for her answer. And just in case. You didn't think my proposal was for a romantic reason like before, did you? The scene transitions to Leo seated in his office holding papers containing information on Layla. He sipped on that cup gently as he thought. Even without shoving garbage like this in your face as proof, you have to come. If you are that Layla. He cursed aloud, a frustrated sigh escaping his lips as he confessed out loud. Fine, just don't come, Layla. So I never have to see your face again. However, several minutes later, his subordinate calls out to him and informs him Lady Orleans has come to see him. Moments later, she stood in front of him with flushed cheeks. He immediately noticed her thin clothes and stepped forward commenting on it, but she just brushed his concern aside, saying it's fine. He asks if she's come to give him her answer, and she asks if that isn't why he called her there. Then her voice drops low as she tells him he already knows everything, that she barely has any choices. Here in the Kingdom of Arkan, centered around the royal Edenhart family, the 7 noble houses form the Privy Council to maintain the balance of power. But House Batten, who has been slowly revealing his ambition, eventually seized the royal family and the balance began to collapse. And now that he has taken the other houses as well, Batten wants nothing more than to swallow the entire kingdom whole. To Batten, Orleans is now nothing more than the most appetizing prey. The country that forms the roots of Orleans is a great power bordering them, as they're simply not moving recklessly yet. After a moment of silence, she reveals Batten intends to marry her to Michael. Whatever she chooses, if it isn't Michael, Batten will keep pressuring Orleans to the very end. She agrees to take his hand, promising to help him become king. His response is, however, unexpected. He asks how he's supposed to trust her, reminding her after all she's already betrayed him once. Furrowing his brows, he tells her she has to give him some certainty that she wouldn't do it again. She stays silent, not a single word leaving her lips before finally walking to him, and then without any warning, she grabs him by his shirt and... In the past, the young count suddenly spoke, "Pretty." She turned and asked if he'd said anything, then he pointed out her stockings, and mentioned she should have been given new ones, so why didn't she throw them out? She gripped her gown tightly, hesitating before finally responding, explaining that she'd prepared for her first duty in her own way, so she bought them herself for the first time. She helped with the ledger back in La Rosa, particularly an old man who stole orders money. She helped with the embezzlement and got a little bit of money as hush money. He was so stupid, if not for her he would have gotten caught. He was stealing from others but never imagined she'd steal from him. That was how she saved money and bought them for the first time. They were silk. Surprisingly, her words were thrown back at her. You said you'd make a deal with even the devil if it meant getting you out of here. When an opportunity comes, you grab it. That's something only someone of your ability can do. There are places where you have to do anything just to survive a day, young master. She stopped close, pressing her lips to his without any warning, ignoring his words, asking her to wait. She pushed him back to the bed and climbed on top of him. However, just as she was about to take his shirt off, he suddenly grabbed her hands, demanding to know what it was she thought she was doing. In response, she simply stared at him, confusion evident, before finally asking why he did that, if that wasn't what he wanted. This is what you wanted. There must be a reason why you personally called me to your bedroom. Something twisted in him and he just stared at her. Then as a knight, he agrees he should meet her expectations. Take it off, Layla. Everything, in front of me. He sat back on the bed while she took off her clothes, and when she finally slipped off the tiny dress she had on, he remarked with a mix of pain and frustration in his voice, "You're not even pretending to be innocent anymore, Layla." Then he went for her lips, warming every inch of her mouth with his tongue before pushing her onto the bed. She raises a hand to her face, unable to hide her vulnerability as she struggles to cope, noticing herself losing control like that. Finally, she gives up and calls his attention. Her eyes dart to the side nervously as she requests for a glass of the wine he was drinking earlier, trying to explain that without alcohol she's a bit. His face went expressionless, then the next minute he let out a sharp scoff, pushing his hair back as he remarked that she sure had a knack for ruining people's mood. He suggested she stay the night unless she wished to spark pointless rumors by moving around at such an hour. Also, he informs her he'll check her proof of trust next time, since the method she suggested seems to work well enough. Lastly, he revealed he hoped next time she wouldn't be as stiff as a rock like she was this time. Afterwards, he got into bed with her. With her laying right next to him, he couldn't resist playing with her hair a little, and in the process ended up seeing the scars on her back. He says up, his mind a haze as he thought. This isn't how I ever wanted to meet you again. I am still stuck back there, living in that place. Do you ever think of me even a little? The scene shifted to Layla running while being chased by a person who called her a killer. She ran and in the process ended up stumbling to the ground. This time, she was called a thief. It was only until she heard him call out to her multiple times before she opened her eyes and realized she was having a nightmare. He asked her to sleep more since it was still too early or have breakfast first. However, she turned him down, insisting she needed to head back to the Orleans estate before it got too late, but he just asked if she thought she could go back looking like that. He reminded her they still had plenty to talk about since they were soon to be engaged after all. He assured her he'll take her back to the Orleans estate after breakfast, and about their contract terms, he asked that they discuss them more in detail so that neither of them loses out and they both can trust the agreement. Later, she sat in a carriage with the Count. They spoke about obvious things for a while before she suddenly flipped and asked what it is he intended to do now. The edge of his lips curled into a knowing smile before he revealed he intended to court her openly for others to see, she specifically. A country bumpkin falling in love at first sight? Hardly a stretch, is it? She turned her head to the side quickly before asking, aside from the theatrics, if he had no other demands. She reminded him she could be quite suspicious and stated that she'd like their transaction to be explicit. Ending with, they are bound by contract after all. The Count simply lets out a sigh, then without any warning closes in on their distance, staring into the depths of her eyes. He asks what exactly she's expecting him to say, unless you plan to strip for me right here and now? He kissed her right after that. Their tongues entangled in each other, their temperature rising, as he leaves her breathless, rendering her vulnerable. While she simply recited this in her head. Whatever it is, he is no longer the boy from back then. A string of spit still lingered between them, standing as proof of the kiss they'd shared. Layla waited to catch her breath, then afterwards landed a slap on his cheek. She asked what was the meaning of what he'd just done, and without any hesitation he reminded her she'd said she wanted something explicit, so he simply showed her what he wanted. Her gaze hardened as she noted that he'd changed, but he just remarked with a chilly smirk, "That's rich coming from you. My cold, heartless Lady Orleans." Once they arrived, the topic of discussion quickly switched to Lady Orleans. Especially, her partner. He was surprisingly polished for a battlefield mercenary and quite well-mannered too. He'd asked Layla to go on, saying he needed to make some preparations. She observed him from the side. He who used to be so awkward in places like that, was now mingling so effortlessly, but none of that mattered to her. Suddenly she hears someone call her. A man with a funny look stood behind her, complimenting the dress she had on. He asked for her company, however a voice suddenly cut in, revealing that the lady had prior engagement. Then without warning the Count grabbed her by her waist. The man yelled behind him, questioning his insolence, but he simply remained composed, even as he called himself just a dog who rolled in from the mercenary corps, using that to excuse his ignorance of highborn etiquette. The man stumbled backwards, calling him vulgar, but he did not mind at all. His response this time was even more brutal. Vulgar and uncivilized I may be, but the prize is already in my hand, is it not? Give him your answer, my lady. With that, Layla confirms that she indeed has prior engagement with Lord Valois. Later, they shared a dance together and he couldn't help but comment how much she's improved, but her response was dry. Time has passed, it is only natural that I improved. And yet, old habits die hard. The music ended and she pulled away, trying to escape the awkwardness of the moment, but she can one more step. The Count suddenly pulls her. He placed a gentle kiss on her fingers, his eyes softened as he admitted he couldn't bear to part without committing one last impropriety. I pray we meet again soon, my lady. She stood outside, staring into the night sky with a gloomy expression. She recalled the dance they'd shared together just moments ago and lowered her head as she asked herself if she still had lingering affection for him. Just then Baron Martin calls out to her. With a light smile he remarked that she became the center of controversy so quickly he thought she would be hiding somewhere. The Baron, at that time where there were only people trying to take advantage of the Orleans position, he was the one who silently did his job and was chosen by the Duke of Orleans. He was the only breathing space for Layla in the suffocating Orleans family and social circle. The Baron with a soft laugh asks if she didn't hide whenever things went wrong when she was little, but she doesn't admit it. He suddenly mentions the Count. He remarked that he was truly barbaric and should never have been so rude to her. With a smile she assured him she was fine and thanked him for his concern, but he just responded that he was still worried about her, suggesting maybe it's because he sees her as much a younger sibling. However, before they could continue, the Count suddenly appeared. He stretched his lips into a forced smile as he informed the Baron his wife was looking for him. He advised that if he didn't want his wife to misunderstand, it will be best for him to leave now, claiming she will feel uneasy seeing him with a young woman. The Baron immediately pointed out that his remark was now an insult to both he and the Duchess. But he didn't budge. His voice was rather calm as he stated that he wasn't one to let go of something he's already bitten onto. "Your Grace, this time, seems to be that kind of person to me." She let out a sigh before asking the Baron to go on to his wife, saying she had something she needed to discuss with the Count. After his leave, she didn't think he was rude to the Count, noting he was her benefactor and he'd only come because he was worried. However, the Count just shot her a smirk as he repeated her words in forms of a question. "Rude? Who knows if that bastard has feelings for you?" She stepped forward, quickly explaining that the Baron wasn't like that. In fact, he and his wife had such a wonderful marital harmony that she found herself hoping to live like that too when she got married, though it wouldn't be easy. The wind that blew straight through her hair brought a memory to the Count's mind. When he was younger, he proposed that they leave together, promising to make sure she wouldn't have a hard life, and she with teary eyes asked if he would truly stay with her. Now he can't help but laugh. He asks her why she would cling to such illusions, noting just as she has changed, true love eventually doesn't last. Still, she insists she hasn't changed as much as he has. He refused it at first, but she stood on her words, even adding that he's become rude now. She mentions that the Baroness had seen everything that happened and questions what he was thinking, and again, he does nothing but smile. He tells her it's good, explaining that the Baroness has a loose tongue so their relationship will spread even more. He needed people to know that he was obsessed with her. She turned her head away and replied that if that was to happen, the Queen might find out he's still alive, but he simply assured her that it was fine. After all, he hadn't revealed his true identity to the Queen. Queen Beatrice, she had been keeping Leopold in check, who threatened Michael's position. On the day she ordered the assassination by the Knight of Baton to cut off the bud, she must have been relieved by Leopold's death. Until he returned as a war hero, even if she recognized him, she must have felt safe since he didn't reveal his identity, because in his current status he wouldn't be able to wield and seize royal power. It didn't matter, because in the end he was Edmond de Valois and was there as a war hero. As long as he was Count Valois on the surface, the Queen had no justification. She turned to him, concern in her eyes as she suggested someone will recognize his true identity, asking how long he planned to keep that up. He simply reached for her face as he gave his answer, "Until the rumor spreads that you're deeply infatuated with me. So endure until then. When everything is over, I will forget the past and let you go." Her gaze drifted to the side as she urged herself not to get carried away. "The Count only needs my position, even if I long for it. The time when we loved each other will never return." In a new scene, the Count with a teasing smile informs Layla people are staring. Hesitation evident, she explained that he was born into a position that attracts people's attention, asking him to get used to it, but more importantly, she asks if he doesn't think his clothes are making people stare more. However, he responded quite confidently, saying, "Only the weak and frail try to hide themselves." He leaned forward without warning, his hand gently adjusting her hat as he told her even if it's a forced smile, she is beautiful when she smiles. He suggests they take a walk together and she accepts. On their walk, she informs him her grandfather wishes to see him. She suggests he must have heard about the rumors and requested to see him while he was visiting for the Founding Day celebration. He asks how she explained their relationship, and she tells him she simply said they were slowly developing affection and getting to know each other. In a new scene, sits in his office gently sipping on tea as he questions aloud what sudden impulse has stirred his granddaughter into such commotion, she who was always so quiet. There were words he couldn't bring himself to say aloud, rather he only hoped she hadn't needlessly provoked that young man's temper. The Count's arrival is announced and her grandfather asks for him to be shown in. A few moments later he walks in. "So you truly are the Duke of Rhineland?" her grandfather asks. Leopold Rio Edelhart, Count of the Rhineland family, he was declared missing and said to have vanished without a trace, yet everyone knew the queen had taken the child's life. Franz II, under the pretext of granting honor to the deceased, elevated the title from count to duke. He simply thought it was a meaningless gesture, never expecting him to return with such dignity. He doesn't waste any time and asks why he has returned, and the count responds firmly stating he has gained honor and power and wondered what there could be that he found possess. That's why he's come back, to claim what rightfully belongs to him. Her grandfather let out a dry laugh as he remarked that the words of a bastard sounded fine enough, however he couldn't place his trust in him, yet his granddaughter pleaded with him. A child who had never once asked for anything before his eyes, she said she didn't want Michael, and having a clear knowledge of the sinister depths of Michael's heart, he agreed with her. The child was far too resolute, therefore he made him a proposal. The House of Orleans will stand at his side if he relinquishes the engagement with his granddaughter. The count asked if that meant he couldn't permit the betrothal, asking what his reason exactly was. He lowered his gaze before he finally began to speak. He admits his life has been filled with countless regrets. He'd given his all for Orleans' prosperity, even forcing his own thoughts upon his son. It was all his greed. He rewarded ambition and called it virtue. To that child I am a mirror. She's accustomed to ensuring and yielding for the sake of a goal, but I want to keep her heart protected at the very least. But the count quickly explained that the engagement wasn't for mere status. He was in love with the lady. He has lived cherishing the memory of the moment they met in childhood. However, he'll back off if the lady finds it troublesome. He raised his hand to his chin, letting out a soft "hm." Before telling him if his feelings are sincere, he shall leave that decision to his daughter. Later, Layla stepped out onto the balcony to catch some air. Her head was in a turmoil and she wished to clear it, but she spotted sudden movement in the bushes down. Before she could even confirm who was there, the count appeared, pressing his hand over her mouth as he hushed her. She asked how he'd gotten in there, asking if he didn't need to kill someone to get in there, but he just asked why he would make such a scene just to come there. His eyes drifted to her bare chest, then without a word he slipped off his coat. Then as he placed the coat around her, he asked if she wasn't being far too defenseless. She replied that there wouldn't be any risks unless it was someone of the count's caliber. Then she asked if he didn't think it discourteous to enter so suddenly like that. However, he simply repeated the word, discourteous? He pulled her close without warning and then asked how it's discourteous if he comes because he wishes to see her. Then he leaned forward, his warm breath brushing her skin as he revealed she was Layla before she was the Lady of Orleans in his eyes. Layla, who was once his maid, but she just pulled away, asking what'll become of her when all of that is over, asking if he'll release her, but he just asked what nonsense she was spouting. She rubbed her neck nervously as she stated that he wouldn't need her once she's outlived her usefulness, so she only asked because she must prepare herself for what lay ahead. His brows furrowed, his eyes looked like he'd been hurt by her words as he asked if that was what she desired. Since you speak so, I ought to make myself perfectly clear. He bit his lips, like he was stopping himself. In his mind he simply questioned if she knew that from the beginning. He had no interest whatsoever in the Bergenwald War. It didn't matter to him if Essenbach was reduced to rubble or his own homeland Aachen was destroyed. And yet, he suddenly thought of her. He thought of her who would be in Aachen even in a battle where loss was almost certain. That is why he couldn't allow himself to lose. Outside his thoughts, he told her she will remain by his side. He'll take care of it even if she disliked it. Then he asked if that was a sufficient answer. He called her utterly self-willed and then reminded her he told her he'd changed. He was no longer that naive count. Yet, she turned her head, refusing to accept that it was because he loved her. He only wished to keep her near. She knew fully well he was only using her, and yet even knowing that, she still found herself continually leaning upon the illusion. The next day, once she got up, her maid came to her with a jewelry box explaining that it had been sent from the royal family and it was clearly an item once used by the queen. She didn't even wait for her to finish with her explanation before ordering her to send it back. Her maid accepted and then informed her afterward that Lord Valois had sent a gift. She brought it to her, and once she laid her eyes on it, she recognized it at once. It was the Tears of the Sea. It was the gift the king of Servon had given to the mermaid he loved. Her maid stood shocked beside, questioning aloud how he managed to get something like that. At the same time, the count was asked by his subordinate if he's given the Tears of the Sea to the lady. The count immediately said yes, even adding that there was nothing one could compare to that if he wanted to give something extraordinary. His subordinate this time asked if the lady was really that important to give something so important, but he simply replied that it wasn't that the lady was important, it was Orleans who mattered most. However, his subordinate saw right through him. It didn't seem to be just about her status, so he silently wondered what kind of person the lady was that he was going out of his way like that. Same with his wealth. He was a mercenary and was so noble that he was called a saint, yet he covered wealth so much, only to have everything he gathered go to that lady. Finally, the count arrived. He complimented her necklace and asked that she address him as Edmund or simply Ed, but not with his title as she's been doing. He brought up the rumors that they're lovers and remarked that despite that she was being so formal. For the first time she called him by his name, bringing a smile on his face. The next minute he pulled her towards him. She stared at him, instantly warning that everyone was watching, but he just asked how that mattered, asking her to let them watch. Then he traced her skin with his tongue before suddenly biting her. She let out a sharp, ugh. She gripped his cloak tightly, warning that she'll fall, but he just told her he wouldn't let go. Soon, some footsteps approached and a familiar voice suddenly spoke, remarking that the count was so passionate. Hearing that, the count glanced back, offering a careless apology. Your Majesty. That's all for now, guys. Thank you for watching.